Education is for improving the lives of others and for leaving your community and world better than you found it. Marion Wright Edelman. It's time for science, and it's time to talk again about implementing elementary science effectively. We talk with a trio of passionate science teachers from the Syracuse City School District about what they've done to have such a successful implementation of the FOSS program. This well-oiled team consists of Science and Technology Director Dr. Dana Corcoran and elementary science instructional coaches Amy MacDonough and Ashley Blood. Dr. Dana Corcoran is the Science and Technology Director for the Syracuse City School District, a role she has been in for the past 10 years. Her extensive teaching experience includes both middle and high school science. Amy M. MacDonough is from Syracuse, New York, and has been working for the SCSD for 24 years. In the classroom for 22 years, this is her second year as an elementary science instructional coach. Ashley Blood is an elementary science instructional coach for the SCSD. Prior to this role, she was an elementary teacher for 10 years in both her home state of Alaska and in Syracuse. She is a passionate science educator as she sees the incredible benefits to her students. We talk about why science education is so important and the importance of a scientific literate community. Our discussion covers many areas, like the importance of instructional coaches in helping teachers get going, getting teacher buy-in, implementing small and then expanding to other grades, and getting teachers excited and making sure new teachers get the support they need. It's time for science, and it is time to talk about implementation strategies. Joining me today from the Syracuse City School District in the great state of New York, land of my birth, are Dr. Dana Corcoran, Ashley Blood, and Amy MacDonough. Dr. Dana Corcoran is the Science and Technology Director for the Syracuse City School District, a role she has been in for the past 10 years. Her extensive teaching experience includes both middle and high school science. And Ashley Blood and Amy MacDonough are elementary science instructional coaches in the district. So who better to talk about the importance of district-wide science implementation, how it helps our students, and how to support teachers to make the most out of it. So Dr. Corcoran, Ashley, and Amy, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yes.
I want to start off with a big picture question. I'll start with Dr. Corcoran about science in general. Why is science important to teach our elementary students especially?
I mean, coming out of COVID in the last couple of years, I think if that time taught us anything, it was how much we need some science in our lives around what was happening in our world. I think that it's really important for just teaching students critical thinking skills, some problem solving skills, asking kids how to ask questions, analyze data, getting evidence-based conclusions. Like all those things are great skills that maybe doesn't lead a child or a student into a science practice or a science position or job, but it just helps them prepare better for perhaps another field that they might go into. Also, it's just becoming an informed citizen, right? Like a scientifically literate population is really much better equipped to engage in discussion and make decisions around important issues such as climate change, like public health, maybe energy policy, and science education really fosters informed and responsible citizenship. So it's definitely critical.
Ashley, I would like you to weigh in on that. Why do you think science in general is such an important subject to be teaching our kids?
Well, I think too, Dana covered so much, but I think it's also really important to talk about Syracuse City being such a large urban school district. We have a lot of students who have learning gaps in ELA and math, who struggle to feel successful in school. And we find that with science instruction, our students often are the most engaged, the most excited learners. And for kids who come to school and don't feel a great deal of success, they can find that in their science instruction. They can do the labs, they can draw the diagrams, they can talk about the phenomenon that they just experienced. And so then we really start to think about equity too, and the importance of equity in science. And we want our kids to see themselves as scientists and to have exposure to this so that maybe someday they are interested in joining a science field.
when I've started doing this podcast, I mean, obviously a big fan of science overall, but I just love how much it encompasses all the other subjects, especially language development. It's fascinating to me. I'd never really put those two pieces together, but it's so important. It's so wonderful. Amy, I'd like you to weigh in on what are your personal feelings in terms of science in general. Why is it so important for kids?
I like that I'm last after these two responses, as they covered a lot. Being in the classroom and having an opportunity to teach science, right? It just relates so much to their real world. And I feel like kids just have a natural liking to that subject, right? It's like, how many times do you take them to the library and they naturally go towards those science books, those animals, those natural disasters, weather, and they just have an interest. It's already usually built in.
I think every kid starts off wanting to be a paleontologist.
Exactly. I think my son
dinosaurs right across the board. That's how it happens. Let's talk about the concept of a district-wide sort of implementation. So, Dr. Corcoran, talking about that, why is that so important? I mean, obviously, multiple schools in the district. You're in a large city. I mean, that's a big urban area. So, why is that particularly so important?
Yeah, this was a huge passion of mine. I think when I got hired back in 2015 to tackle that there was no comprehensive elementary science program in any of our schools. We had pockets of things from some grant work that had happened. We had some like living materials here and there in different pockets of our buildings. And, we have 33 total schools, 21 are elementary and pre-K 8s. So they have the K-5 classrooms in those buildings. So it was very hard from a support perspective for everyone being like, hey, I want to do some science. What do we do? What do we do? Right? So we said, I was alone. I was all by myself in this job. And I'm like, I've got to do something because our kids deserve it. And I can't support this without some sort of program. I had seen Ashley actually teaching fourth grade several times. She was part of the grant that was implemented in the district when I started. And I was like, wow, this woman, she knows what she's doing. I gotta pull her, and had some conversations around finally fighting to get my, elementary instructional coach out of the classroom and into the district office with me. And I had piloted some of these programs. We had decided on FOSS implementation and just having some support around that, but just ensuring equity across the board in all of our buildings and making sure that we had that comprehensive program. Because like I said, we had nothing, and it was a desert, and it was obvious that no one had been teaching science for a really long time. And, we were passing our state assessment because it had been around for 28 years and people knew the tricks and what was going to be on it. And we could get kids success on that test, but they weren't really, I'm not so sure in all of our classrooms, they were really learning the concepts, right? So we had to get a program. There was no doubt.
I think it's great that you, right now in front of me, are two instructional coaches in the district. I mean, having that sort of support is amazing. So, Amy, what do you do? I mean, what is your role, and why is it important? How do you help the teachers and the students?
Well, Ashley's going to laugh at me. Ashley was my coach, and the program rolls in, and I'm 24. At the time, I was about 18 years in the district teaching, and it's exactly what Dana said. We're just pulling random concepts, and there was really nothing for us to use. And then they said, hey, we have this wonderful program, and in comes, 8 boxes. And I'm like, what's all that? I'm used, and Ashley, thank goodness for Ashley. She came in and really helped me figure out how to go through those materials, where to go, how to break it down. And then, being a coach now, it's like I just go back to how I felt when I first started and what Ashley kind of did for me to kind of like get you going, because it can be a little overwhelming.
I'm definitely going to come back to that because that's an important point. But now I need to go to Ashley, who apparently is the linchpin for all of this. You are the foundational person. Look, we're making little hearts and everything. So, Ashley, talk to me about your journey. I mean, obviously you were a great teacher, and now you're working in the district to help other teachers. But where did your passion come from, and what is it that you do, or what do you feel the instructional coaches do?
Well, to back up a little bit, so part of the reason Dana and I connected is I started teaching here in Syracuse. I had recently relocated from Alaska, actually, where I started my career. And in Alaska, they were already using the FOSS curriculum. So I was really familiar already with the kindergarten and first grade FOSS. And so when I moved to Syracuse, and the school that I got hired at was part of the grant that was piloting some FOSS, I jumped right into it. I had had FOSS training. I'd taught it for 3 years. I kind of knew what was going on. And so I kind of connected with Dana through that. I was doing it on the regular. And so she started tabbing me for little projects. She would have people come and watch me teach, and the two of us connected, and she actually has family in my hometown. So we got close, and I've always been really passionate about science. I think it's really important for our students with disabilities and our students with IEPs. They often find a lot of success in science. And so when Dana approached me to be a science coach, I was like, nah, it's not for me. I want to be in the classroom. And she was like, Ashley, you could have a lot bigger impact and get a lot more kids to experience the science instruction that you're giving your students. And so that's how I started with her. And we started with only 2 grade levels. We had 4th and 5th grade, and then every year we added another grade level. And Dana likes to call it sweat equity. We were kind of just in the schools, talking to teachers, modeling a lot of lessons, unpacking a lot of kits, prepping materials, really just hands in.
Hands-on science.
Hands-on
That's
science,
our motto.
yeah.
I love that. I also love that you went from Alaska to Syracuse. So it must, similar sort of, climates, maybe a little warmer in Syracuse. I don't know.
Little bit.
Dr. Corcoran, I would like to ask about how does the implementation process look like? I mean, who did you have to, if a teacher is listening to this and says, man, we need that in our district, who do you go to? Who do you talk to? Do you go all the way up to the superintendent? What is sort of that process? What obstacles were there in the way?
Sure. Well, in our district, we obviously have a piloting protocol, and we couldn't just go pick what we wanted, which I understand. You've got to have teacher buy-in. I can't just do this in a silo and pick a program and be like, here you go, folks, this is what you're doing. So we had to pilot, and we piloted a couple of different programs. There's a protocol that we follow in the district around, you have to have teacher meetings and feedback, student surveys and feedback, observation of lessons of whatever the curricula are that you're piloting, and then make the decision. And then it requires our Board of Education to get involved. And I had to do a presentation in front of the board. And I mean, our program that we currently have, FOSS, was the clear front runner because 1, it was a wonderful program, super comprehensive, and 2, several of our teachers had been familiar with it due to that grant that we had. Not a lot. I mean, several, but not. We have a lot of teachers using our program. So, and it was tough. There were a lot of folks that were resistant to it just because they had not done science instruction in so long. And, to be fair, elementary teachers are not always science content experts, right? They're jacks of all trades. They specialize, most of them, in math and ELA. When they come out of their teacher prep programs, they have several preparatory courses for those contents and usually just about 1 for science. So I understand there was resistance. I think once folks overcame that, started to get training, met Ashley, met me, got us in rooms. I think once they saw the excitement for kits and the engagement around it, and they're like, wait a minute, I've got kids who are off the wall. And now when I teach science, they're engaged, they're writing, they're questioning, they're paying attention. Okay, something's really good about this, right? So once we started to grow, that implementation became a little bit easier as we added each grade level. At the time, Ashley and I would say it was not easy, right? But now looking back, once 4th and 5th grade were doing it, then everyone's like, well, wait a minute, I want that in my room. When am I getting it? And, then we did 3rd grade and we went down, and, then the need became, we needed another coach. We needed another instructional coach, because to manage that, I'm K-12, so I do a little bit in all the grade levels. To manage just K-5 became huge, and the buy-in started to be there, right? We have some resistance. There's still folks who are not, they give us a run for our money, but for the most part, it was just overcoming that first obstacle of the pilot and just getting people trained and on board with look what you can do in your room with these materials. And I think people took it and ran.
Well, this is exactly what I wanted to come back to with Amy, because Amy, you had mentioned that you were possibly one of those kind of teachers, a little intimidated by the science thing. And this comes up a lot in the podcast because a lot of, K through 5, they have to do everything and they're wonderful at everything. But science can feel intimidating to even the average person. It's just science is like, oh, I can't do science. So how do you help a teacher overcome that, having kind of gone through that yourself?
Well, like I said earlier, too, I think, when I was in the classroom and I was teaching everything, once I gave the program, the second I started to really give FOSS a chance, it was exactly what these two are saying, right? I'm like, wait a second. Whoa. This one here is the group leader. This one over here, like everybody's on task. Everybody's engaged. Somebody is doing something, whether they're writing, drawing, coloring, labeling. This is great. Everybody is hands-on. They're doing the science. They're understanding the science. And I think once I saw how amazing it was in the classroom, that's when I reached out to Ashley and said, okay, you got me. Show me what else I can do. How can I do this more? And she just kept pushing me. And I think the first thing that I like to do with any teacher that's new or a little bit standoffish, it's like, all right, let's just pull your materials. Let's take a look at these lessons. This is the goal. Everything is paced out for the teachers. We have Padlets for them to go on. We're linked up to FOSS on our district webpage where there's even teacher prep videos that are quick, short, and when you're done watching them, you know exactly what the kids are supposed to get out of the lesson. So I think just showing them some tricks of how to manage materials and places where they can go for a little bit of help, and if they'll give it a chance.
Ashley, I want you to weigh in on this in terms of, is there anything you can add to that? Because it definitely feels like once you see it in action, it can overcome a lot of that reticence. But, if a teacher is just sort of just intimidated, what kind of things do you tell them?
Well, we definitely, Amy and I were just talking about how the last couple of years we've really been focusing on developing content knowledge for our teachers. So when we go in and work with them, we do help with materials. That's kind of like obviously like the first thing that we're going to attack, right, is materials, getting things prepped. But then what is the content that you need to make sure that kids understand? So for example, our 5th grade teachers just finished mixtures and solutions. So we're meeting with teachers and, oftentimes we do like PLC work. We talk to them about, all right, what is saturation? What does concentration mean? What is conservation of mass? And making sure that they understand those concepts and breaking it down for them. We've had a lot of teachers that are like, how did I not know this? This is so basic, right? That the sun is stationary, right? And that the day-night cycle is because of the earth and its rotation. Like some of our teachers, they're just not science experts, like Dana said. And so really breaking that content down for them and not making them feel like Amy and I, we don't go in and we're not judging you. We're just really passionate science teachers, and we want you to feel good about this, and we want your kids to have these experiences. So we always just try to make things really simple and break things down for our teachers. If you could walk away from this unit and your kids know these things, we're pumped. And letting them know what those goals are. Like Amy said, we pace out the lesson so teachers know what the priorities are. We take a lot of the focus question labels, pre-printed science notebooks for our youngest scientists. We take some of that off the teachers' plates so that they can focus on developing that content and delivering the lessons.
I've always said I have nothing but respect for elementary teachers because they have to know all of this stuff, math and English. I mean, it's almost easier to be a specific, teacher of something because I know this subject really well. So that's one of my favorite things about FOSS is how it can help teachers reach all of that kind of thing. I want to talk a little bit, Dr. Corcoran, about professional development opportunities. Like what sort of things do you do seminars, things like that with the teachers, getting them more training in this whole thing?
Sure. I will say that that has been a challenge for us in our district is really diving deep and focusing on a lot of the professional development needed, only because we do take a back seat to some other content sometimes, as we've discussed, right? Especially in New York State, Math and ELA are tested at grades 3-8. Science is only tested at 5-8. And so they go where the test is, right? So that's where they put a lot of bang for their buck. But now that we have this program, we're saying we would be remiss in our duty as educators to put these boxes and materials in teachers' rooms without giving them proper information or instruction. I have to, shout out Ashley and Amy immensely, because they have literally mowed down any roadblock that has been in the way of teachers. You can't come to the in-person session that we're having, which, is after school, and we understand, okay, here's a video for you on how to do it, and we'll put it on our Padlet and it'll show you. Here's a virtual session that we're going to offer. We're going to get on and have some conversation around this. We try to pull teachers. At the beginning, we were able to pull teachers more for all day sessions. We had FOSS reps come in quite a bit too with us to do some unpacking sessions and things like that. But we realized as we got a little bit more experienced that we were going to have to do a lot of the lifting around that PD. But so we try our best. We're trying really hard to continue to get those things out there and get that information out there, but also knowing like, okay, our test is at 5th grade this year. We got to focus on a grade level at a time in some instances to really develop teachers. But Ashley and Amy, we're really good at the like no opt-out rule with teachers, right? Like you can't say no. We're doing this. This is like breathing in and out in your room. It's part of the curriculum. We're not saying no. We're not saying no to having living materials in your room. We're not saying no to having a coach come in and help you in your room. Everybody can learn, including us, right? So we evolve and change some of our methodologies too when it comes to PD and those things. But we don't opt out. We make sure that people they're getting what they need, and these two ladies here are super instrumental in doing that. So
I love it. You gotta spearhead it and go right at them. Give them all the options. Ashley, can you weigh in on that? How important is professional development, and what obstacles do you have to overcome?
I mean, there are a lot of obstacles with PD right now. In our school district, we also have a lot of uncertified teachers. I mean, that's just kind of the national trend right now with the teaching force. So making sure that when we have new teachers that they are getting the support that they need. So every year, Amy and I are making lists of all of our brand new teachers, and we're going and we're checking in with you, and we are running separate sessions that are just for our brand new teachers so that they understand how the box labeling system works, how to prep your materials, how do you get on FOSS Web or ThinkLink, where do you find everything that you need, so like kind of that tier 1 support. So really making sure that we're working with our first year teachers, and then for our teachers who have been around for a long time, like Amy just 2 years ago was still in the classroom. Amy became such a rock star teacher. She's like, all right, what else you got for me, right? So like we started really simple with her, and towards the end of her time in the classroom, it was like, okay, now you're ready for some additional things, right? And so to do that, we have really personal relationships with a lot of our teachers. And I think that that's what makes our team so special, is that we are really passionate about what we do, and we just want to see the kids do science. We want to see teachers implement the science. And so we really work on our relationships with our teachers and knowing what is it that they need, what are their goals, individually for that teacher, what are we going to do to support them?
And if I could just add a little bit to that too, I think, the three of us we're all moms, right? And we have kids who are in classrooms. Ashley's son is in a pre-K room in our district, right? So we have our children. When I go into classrooms to observe, like I see my kids, my own personal kids in those classrooms, and I say, gosh, what would I want if my son, my 5th grader, was sitting here? What would the expectation be for him and his teacher? And man, I hope he's getting this too, right? Like I hope he's getting what he needs. And so I see a little bit of my own personal children in our classrooms, and I say, well, I want what's best for my kids. I need to do what's best for these kids too. And I think a lot of us feel that way across the board.
I love the idea of, of expressing how exciting science is, because I grew up as an artist and my two favorite things were art and science, because it was always exciting. It was always interesting. And so that engagement with the kids, just so amazing. Amy, I wanted to ask you, all of you, I'm going to ask this question too, is what kind of improvements have you noticed in either teachers or maybe like an anecdote about a student learning or improvements you've seen from people using these programs and doing that kind of thing? Any personal stories about that?
I always think that the teachers are always surprised that there really is something for all of our children to do, whether it's starting off with just a diagram and being able to add to that. I really would say that our teachers would agree with us in saying that our kids have moved in their notebooks from the beginning to the end of the year or from grade to grade, because they really have an interest in the subject, in this material. And I just find that the notebooking, because we don't make the notebooks for them, we give them a lot of freedom in the notebook. And because we do that, I just think our students, our scientists, are able to kind of take it in their own direction.
I love that. I think that's it. It's one of my favorite aspects of FOSS in general. Dr. Corcoran, anything for you in terms of how teachers have responded or student stories?
I think just to echo some of what Amy said, right? You see the progression and growth of kids on the daily when you're in those rooms, and how their writing develops and their diagramming develops in the notebooks. But also talking to teachers around behavior and just knowing that, okay, I have this child and he's on my like fly list, right? He's just out the door or running around or can't sit still. And then we get the materials out. He's the getter. He helps set stuff up, and just seeing the atmosphere change and hearing over and over again from teachers in several buildings across the district who don't know each other at all. And they're telling me the same story about, wow, like my behaviors have really changed in this classroom. And here's why. And it's engagement. It's engagement around science. So
I love that in science, especially. I bet you can see a heck of a difference from September to June. Just incredible visual, like, look what you did. It's just amazing. Ashley, I just would have any feelings about this, the way things progress for teachers and or students.
So something that is in my mind is last night I was working with a group of teachers, and they have a really high ENL population, so English as a new language, or our English language learners. And she was talking to me about how she loves the program for her L students because they are putting things in their hand, they're discovering the phenomenon, and they're discovering it at the same time with their peers. And they get to be hands-on, they get to be involved. So even if they maybe don't know the language or aren't able to write, they can draw pictures, they can look at the realia and really understand the phenomenon and what they're experiencing. So we really love it for our English language learners.
The topic of access and equity comes up a lot in science, and I just wanted you to weigh in a little bit about that, how maybe FOSS program, but in general, science in general is just one of those things that really seems to cover that very, very well, almost better than any other subject that I can see. I'd like you to weigh in on that, Dr. Corcoran. How important is that, and how do you emphasize it?
I mean, I think it's very important. I think introducing science at an early age helps all students develop a really strong foundation, and that early exposure can spark interest and curiosity, particularly in students from underrepresented communities who might not have access to science outside of school. And that's a lot of our kids in the city, for sure. And we can try to work on closing that achievement gap between students from different socioeconomic backgrounds. That equitable access to different learning opportunities in science can ensure that all of our students have a chance to succeed, particularly around this content.
Amy, can you weigh in on that? How do you feel about the access and equity part of the equation?
Yeah, I mean, you can see an interest. I mean, and I stated it earlier before, I mean, most of the kids in the classroom, when you say it's time for science, or, that teacher puts that lab coat on, the excitement, or, they know that switch is going to change, and everybody has the opportunity to touch the same materials, look at that same question. And I'm also thinking about when they go off to middle school and they have that science every day, right? It's like, We know they go off to middle school. We know that it gets harder and it just keeps building and building. And then high school, it's like now we have given them the opportunity, all of our kids, right? K-5 coming in with some of that background knowledge. And Ashley and I did a book talk over the summer about a year ago called Science in the City. Ashley, I think when you talk about the vocabulary, what a big aha when we tried to allow our kids to say it in their own way, and how that book talk, how, you know what I mean? Like, can you talk about that?
So Science in the City, if you haven't read it, it's a fantastic book, but it really talks about how kids don't need to talk like scientists and use all the science terminology. And if a kid can explain momentum without using the word, how much more powerful it is for them to share that in their own words, with their bodies, with their diagramming, however they're going to communicate that they don't use the actual word in order to convey that they understand that. And so we've worked a lot with our teachers on allowing kids to share their thinking in a way that might not sound like science, and it might not always look the way that it should, but students are expressing their thinking and their understanding in a way that makes sense for them. And so the sense-making discussion that happens at the end of a lesson is so important for that, because all students have the opportunity to share their thinking, to build off of one another, to come to this class consensus around what was the phenomenon and what science concepts do we learn from this. And that collaborative type of experience with the sense making, make sure that kids walk away at the end with that complete understanding of the phenomenon that they just experienced, and that they can do that in a way that makes sense for them, and using the language and the terminology that makes sense for them. And that's why it's really important for our teachers to understand the content knowledge too, so that they know what the goal is, they know they're heading in the right direction. They know what vocabulary they may want to do some direct instruction on, right? To give that to their students, so that they can understand, okay, this is what the student is bringing to the table in their own way. Here's how I can support what they're sharing, using some of the terminology or some of the content knowledge that they need.
I've always felt that the collaborative nature of science is such a great foundation for kids, no matter what they go into. You have to collaborate with other people eventually, and we often don't get that until high school or college. And so it's great that it starts that much younger. I think it's a wonderful thing to do.
That's one of our other opt-out. You have to have kids in collaborative groups. They have to be working in teams around materials. Like, that's another thing that we're sticklers on.
And I just want to say one last thing. Districts can do this. Like, we did it. We are a huge district. We have over 20,000 kids with 30 plus schools. If we can do it, other folks can do it. It just takes, like Ashley said, a lot of sweat equity, but it can be done, and it is totally worth it for sure.
That's great. I love that. I feel that this could be a 9-hour podcast, but we don't have 9 hours. So I just want to thank you all for being here. I love your passion for this, and I think everybody should strive to have a district-wide sort of thing, because I think it supports teachers and students so wonderfully. So thank you all for being here. It's Time for Science is produced, recorded, and edited by David Lipman and Tom Racine, and is sponsored by School Specialty and FOSS, the full option science system, at the Lawrence Hall of Science, UC Berkeley. Be sure to check out FOSS on Facebook and Instagram.